All right, we are back now with Top Stories Spotlight, and I'm joined by a very special guest tonight. If you've ever lived or even visited New York City, you have seen his face, and if you've listened to him, you likely learned something. And like millions of others over the years, he became a mainstay in your home. In the biggest market in the country, no one has been able to match his reign over the airwaves. He is the one and only Chuck Scarborough. And over his decades-long career at WNBC, our flagship station, he has covered everything, from terrorist attacks to space exploration to COVID-19. He's not only been a leader in the news industry, but also a friend and mentor to so many, including myself. Chuck, we thank you for being here, and we are celebrating you. It is incredible. You've been on the air anchoring for more than 50 years, on air longer than that. You're officially signing off. But before you go, let's take a quick look back at your career.
Good evening, I'm Chuck Scarborough. This is News Center 4.
The hospitals we've checked with so far all are working on auxiliary power.
We're just about to go through the speed of sound right now. We're at Mach 0.98.
You did very well tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to have you.
I'm so nervous I couldn't eat.
8 of our servicemen have been killed in an aborted attempt to rescue the hostages in Iran.
At stake, the freedom of the West. It's a game that we may be losing.
One moment our president's being shot, and the next we're launching a new era in space exploration.
What was it like for you, knowing you'd identified them right away, to sit in that courtroom and not be able to tell it to a jury?
This is the wine country in central Chile. Yes, I want to bring you up to date on an air crash off the south shore of Long Island tonight. This is the top-of-the-line Navy fighter right now, the F-18. The primary purpose of the summit here in Moscow is to hammer out some sort of a deal on loose nukes.
The back door of this plane is going to open, and this para-rescue team, the 4 jumpers, are going to be jumping out.
Since the horror of 9/11, we've heard a great deal about the heroics of firefighters and police officers and medics who rushed in trying to save lives. But there were other heroes that day. When the snow begins to accumulate, it's time to go check the avalanche conditions. Let's go.
And this year there were about 200,000 participants and 2 million more spectators. Our own Tom Yamas got to be part of it. Tom?
Well, Chuck, it's really amazing how quickly the city cleans up.
And we start with positive news on the road to reopening here in our area. Thank you for joining us, and good night.
Who was that young reporter? It looked like he had something.
You haven't changed a bit, Tom.
Chuck, so when you started, did you ever imagine you'd go this long?
Oh, heavens, no. No, when I came down here in 1974, the station had been through some terrible ratings periods, you know, and they'd churned through several anchors, and I was, I guess, naive enough at 30 to come down and think I could possibly do something. But I had no ambitions of staying beyond a 3-year contract. Yeah. As you know, we live in these little increments.
Right.
Yeah, so, but remarkably, here I am 50 years later.
Throughout your career, you navigated New Yorkers through things like the Son of Sam, 9/11, COVID-19. Did it ever weigh on you that New Yorkers were turning to you for answers? They were looking for information. They needed you in some cases?
Absolutely. The responsibility that goes with anchoring a newscast is enormous, especially when you build up a reservoir of trust over time. And certainly, that trust is something that I've guarded carefully if I can. It's something hard to earn and pretty easy to lose. So that responsibility does weigh heavily.
You've reported on thousands of stories throughout your career. I know there's one that's very close to your heart. We have a clip here. Set it up for us.
Well, this was a story that I initially went out because I went to the southern Philippines because we had a little-known element of the war and terror going on there. That was in the southern Philippines, was mostly Muslim. There was a terror group there called the Abu Sayyaf. They were the group that bombed the World Trade Center in 1993.
The original one,
So
right?
I wanted to go cover that part of the story of the war and terror in 2002. My uncle happened to have a great World War II story from that same area. He was in the first attack on the Japanese fleet in Manila Bay, and he was a dive bomber pilot. He was shot down, crash landed in Manila Bay, and was rescued by the guerrillas who were fighting a guerrilla war, the remnants of the Filipino army, against the occupying Japanese army. So he spent 3 months fighting with them and got back to his fleet and became my uncle, married my mother's sister.
And who did you talk to?
So anyway, I'm going to the Philippines. I spent a week embedded with the Special Forces hunting the Abu Sayyaf and filed a series of reports. And I thought, well, as long as I'm here, I'll stop in Manila on the way back and see if there's any record of my uncle fighting with the guerrillas. When I went into the administration there, and to the VA administration, I discovered that there was an old guerrilla fighter who actually ran a department of guerrilla affairs in the Philippines, and a Colonel Diacampo. And in our interview, I asked him if he had any record at all or had any knowledge of it. It turned out, it began to dawn on the both of us that he actually was part of the group that rescued my uncle, just out of the blue. And the clincher on that was he remembered a song as we were doing one of those walking shots where you're getting some cover footage. He started singing a song. He said, my uncle used to sing.
And this is from World War II.
World War II. And so this old colonel, I said, wait a minute, because now I could have absolute proof. I called my mother, not realizing it was 3 a.m. in East Hampton, where she was living. Got her on the phone and said, I'm here in Manila with Colonel Diaz Campo, and he wants to sing a song to you. Could you identify it? And that was my last source there. So that moment when my mother recognized the song was the tail end of the story that I put together, and that's what we have.
Colonel Diaz Campo somehow recalled a song the young pilot sang and began to sing it. I called my mother in New York and asked her if she recognized the tune.
On a bright September morning.
It was a remarkable moment. An old guerrilla fighter singing to a woman he never met half a world away.
Yes.
And she remembered.
She says, Uncle Al used to sing that song.
So it was that the connection was made and the mists of time fell away. A song sung in a Philippine jungle by my uncle more than half a century ago led me to a man who knew him then. The story was now complete.
Still gives you goosebumps. Yeah, incredible.
That was really one of these little pearls that occurs occasionally when you don't expect it in a story. Something pops up, and it just makes the story sing. And
how has the business changed since you got in?
Well, there's been a lot of changes. When I started, we were using 16 millimeter color reversal film. You'd actually hold it up and look at the news you shot and clip it, glue it together, and hope that all the glue joints held for the evening news. We probably in the middle 70s, late 70s, we switched over to videotape. But then the technological changes started piling on. Yeah. Suddenly the computers came on board, and digital came on board, and cable channels came on board, and the two things happened. Technology made it much faster and easier to do what we do and do it more comprehensively. We can go live anywhere now at any moment. It used to be very tedious. And also, the economics have changed because of shows like this, those various channels, all the digital channels out there, all the competition. There's a fragmentation of the audience. Right. So that's changed.
But the principles still the same.
Absolutely. The basic principles of journalism, of getting it right, verifying it. Yeah. Being fair, all of those principles are exactly the same as they were when I came in here.
You mentioned being live. You were live with another legend for a long time, Sue Simmons, who, if you lived in New York, you definitely knew Sue. And Chuck and Sue, you guys were one of the most dynamic teams ever, anchor teams ever. Talk to me about what it was like working with her, and give me one good story, because there were so many good stories about Sue Simmons. It's got to be PG or at least PG-13, because this is streaming.
That's a big ask. Sue, I like to say that Sue never had an unspoken thought. Right. But somehow it was always amusing. It all came out of her mouth. And it was one night there was a story on about a baby whale that had washed ashore, and it was not doing well, and marine biologists were trying to nurse it back to health. And it was one of these little voiceovers that we did coming out of the weather or something. And her co-anchor said something kind of inane, like, well, gee, I hope he gets better. And she said, well, I do too. And if he gets well, I'll kiss his little blowhole.
When she says that, what do you do?
Yeah. Well, you have to crack up a little bit. Yeah. It's funny. It was perfectly fine, perfectly clean, but it sounded a little naughty. Yeah, truth be told, Sue, because I was on set with you guys a few times, Sue would say something totally inappropriate, really funny, usually during a commercial break or when you were tossing to your package. Oh, always. And she would sort of kind of poke the bear a little bit, and you would just laugh. You never stopped her. It was hysterical. You just enjoyed the show. We sat like this, and there was a lever on my chair down here that would raise it and lower it. And she could reach over with her foot when I wasn't paying attention and kick that lever. So I did, I don't know, probably a dozen or so shows in a half squat. Yeah, where you just trying to land. The chair fell off from under me just before I went on the air. So, Chuck, you've done so much, especially over the last 50 years. What's next for you? I know you love carpentry. I know you love military history. I know you love shooting. What are you going to be doing with all your time now? I've been watching this show. This is a pretty good show. Looks like fun, Tom. You're doing a great job. Come over to streaming. We'd love that. Another 50 years. But do you have plans? Well, I'm still under contract with the company. Yeah. And now I'm just released from the anchor desk, but I may have some special projects in the future. Maybe go back to the Philippines and check on Uncle Al's memory again. I don't know, sing some more songs. Chuck, I want to thank you personally. You've been always such a good friend to me, and you actually, I know, early in my career gave them the idea to put me on the anchor desk, one of the reasons why I'm here. So I thank you for that. I thank you for all your service as a journalist, as an anchor, and New York is better because of you. Well, thank you. I appreciate it very much, Tom. Chuck Scarborough, we'll keep watching what you do next.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.